Hello, Jesse.
Hello, Jeremy.
How are you, man?
I'm doing great. It's a rainy Midwest Friday here, but having a blast.
You know what? From one Midwesterner to another, we're 4 hours apart from Chicago to St. Louis, maybe a tiny bit depending on how you drive. It's good to see your face. I've been following your work for quite a long time. We interacted in your Ampush days and my Tube Mogul days. And my mentor and dear friend Brett Wilson, you know him, and then a couple other companies in between. So it's nice to put the face to the name. I appreciate you doing this.
And I'm glad I'm here.
So, Jesse, to kick things off, you are someone who is prolific on socials, who makes it very apparent of trial and error. You are authentic. You were authentic before it was cool to talk about being authentic.
Yeah.
You're the real deal of what you see is what you get. And so a lot of what we talk about on OhHello, on the podcast and within our platform is really about showcasing vulnerability. It's about mentorship. Yeah. It's about access. It's about getting access for different businesses to provide access for their employees to gain access and advice from people that have been there and done that.
Sure.
Let's kick things off. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about what you're doing and how you got on this journey as an entrepreneur that is juggling several different balls at once?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of places I can start the story, but I'll start it in classic storyteller fashion, at a really down moment. You know, I think the year's 2017. I had a company invested and bought a stake in Ampush. And I had a call with their founder who mentored mine. And he said, hey, you know, we decided they had an option to buy the rest of the business. We decided we're not going to exercise our option. We're not buying you guys. And, you know, the floor fell from underneath my feet. And I was like, ugh. And in some ways, the deal had been designed appropriately, which actually was good. It was like, well, we don't want to have an earnout. That's why we had designed it that way. We'll give you an option to buy. And if you don't, then we get to retain our ownership of the business.
Sure.
And I always tell people financially, the deal actually worked out quite well for me. Emotionally, it was a real challenge because I didn't want to keep running the business. I was pretty done with it. And, you know, I'm sensitive to mental health and stuff, but I think for the first time in my life, for the next 6 months, I was the closest I've ever been to kind of depressed. And I would wake up in the morning, and, you know, my wife and I have been together since we were teenagers, and I'm kind of an Energizer bunny. And I wake up and I get going, and I would wake up in the morning. I'd look at my calendar. I'd cancel, the morning. I'd say, I'm canceling this meeting, go back to sleep, get up by 10 o'clock, show up at 11 o'clock to the office, take a few conversations, meetings, and 4 o'clock I'd leave. And I did that for about 6 months. And I was really just didn't want to be there and didn't want to do it. And Rick, you know, the Red Ventures founder, he very graciously gave me some very candid feedback. He said, you know, you're one of the luckiest dudes I've ever met. And it seems like you have forgotten that. And so there's probably some inner work for you to be doing. And that started an amazing journey that continues to this day for me, where I started working with a coach who I love called Dave Cashin. And to fast forward the story, I mean, I could talk about this forever, but to fast forward the story, he really helped me unpack where I had lost sort of perspective and then regained purpose and perspective around what really drives me. And what I realized is that beyond money and beyond status and success, like I love helping other people learn and grow. I love myself learning and growing. And underneath that is I enjoy coaching and teaching. I enjoy creating things and building. I enjoy meeting new people and learning new things. And so after we sold Ampush, I had some time downtime. I was like, I want to design a thing that's going to let me just be, you know, what I call in my zone of genius all the time, and just kind of that endless energize me. And that's what GatewayX is. And so GatewayX is, it's got a lot of different things, but it's a venture studio meets a holding company. So we launch our own companies. I describe it to kind of a layman. I say it's like a holding company, but we're not buying companies. We're building them from scratch. And so we start companies. We get them profitable early on. They all relate to kind of my knowledge and expertise in growth marketing. And we've launched 6 companies in the last 4 years. 2 we've shut down, 2 are crushing it, and 1 is new, and then 1 has kind of gone sideways. And so that's kind of what the portfolio looks like. And we have what got us here won't get us there. So we may actually change all the things we're doing in the next few years, which I'm happy to talk about, but that's where we are right now.
Let's hit on the two that you decided to pivot out of. Let's hit on the two that are crushing, and then the other two that are in those in between zones. Because obviously, as someone who's founded companies before, and being able to make those kinds of decisions as a founder and as an executive, those are not easy decisions to make, and when it impacts people. So let's walk through it a little bit.
I mean, I gotta do the summary version. Let me think of it. The two we shut down. One was an experiment essentially, so it was never meant to be a business. It was an e-commerce brand that we called Pooforia, which is the amazing feeling you get when you go to the bathroom, take a number two. And I was like, I can outmarket anyone. It doesn't matter what the product is. I'm just gonna get these random products off the shelf and see if I can. And I always tell people, it turns out like I'm a pretty good head coach when it comes to growth marketing, but I'm not the quarterback anymore. And so like we didn't do a very good job of it. And or product matters a lot more than we appreciated. And I actually got like I think I knew a lot about growth marketing from Ampush for 10 years, doing it for Dollar Shave Club and Blue Apron and Peloton and Uber. I mean, everyone. I actually realized how little I knew about running the rest of the business. And that was a pretty humbling experience for me. So that was one. The other one was a SaaS business called Kahani, which was it was a really cool idea. It was software. The bet was that the interface for e-com looks like an old school website still, and it should look a lot more like TikTok and Instagram interface, which is like really rich video and interactive. And truly, I still believe in the idea. I think it's a great idea. The first product we developed was the stories feature on an e-commerce business. So you could click, those little circles would be at the top. You'd tap on them, and then you'd get this story like you do on Instagram. And people loved it initially. It just didn't really drive results for their business. And so we actually raised money for that business, funny enough. And
I remember hearing about it and seeing it.
And I stared down. I said we'd raise money, and I didn't like burning money. Is another thing I realized about myself. Like I like profitable companies, even in the early stages. But the biggest decision, that was a very personal one, where I was the CEO, and I agreed to be the CEO to the investors. And I looked at, we hadn't spent much of the money. Maybe we raised 3.5 and we had spent $500,000. And I said, okay, we got plenty of money, but this is going to take a year at least of testing and guessing until we figure out a version of this product that could work. And we had employees, and we had all these people. And I had to be honest. I said, I don't want to do that. Personally, I just didn't want to do it.
It takes a lot.
I wanted to run the venture studio. And, in that case, I actually called the investors. I said, look, I can give you your money back. You can roll it into the studio if you want. And one of them took their money back, and I gave them also a note, so I'll pay them back in full at some point. And the other one said, well, you know what? We like you, Jesse. We'll have some fun with this ride. Let's see what happens. So they put their money at the studio, and that's, I think it'll work out well for everyone who was involved. So those were both two tough lessons, but there was a ton learned from both of them.
What about the companies that are doing great right now?
So, I think that in guessing and testing, I think the formula has become somewhat obvious to me now, which is Ampush was a tech-enabled marketing service. And it turns out that like I have an unfair advantage when it comes to marketing. I know a lot of CMOs. I know a lot of knowledge about marketing. I have a reputation there. And then
you do.
I also develop unique insights, which is I can see kind of things and gaps in the market that aren't there. So the first gap I spotted was for GrowthAssistant. And, we at Ampush, my first company, we had a 50-person global team. I'm guessing you guys had a global team at TubeMogul. It's common in ad tech and growth marketing to have that. But I had a bunch of employees who would leave and run growth at various brands. And I kept getting them texting me and calling me going, Jesse, I need that team that I used to have, because my whole US team is like, they've got so much stuff on their plate, and there's all these things they shouldn't be spending their time on, but there's no, and I said, there's nothing like this exists. And I was actually surprised at that time. Nothing like it existed for like what I call the mid-market of brands and agencies. If you're, Accenture will do you if you're a Fortune 100, and there's some really small business style, but there was no one who's like, I can cater to the kind of startups. And so that's what GrowthAssistant is. We started it about 4 years ago. Today we have over 600 people globally across 150 brands and agencies. And it's been awesome. And we have a bunch of new stuff we're doing with AI there that in the next 6 months, like my hope by 2026, it'll be an AI company. So that's the one. And the other one is, again, another sort of like interesting angle on marketing services, tech-enabled marketing services. I have a bunch of friends. I went to Penn, which is known for Wall Street, sort of, Wall Street people. And I have a bunch of friends in private equity.
Yep.
And I kept getting the same phone call from a different friend, like month after month. And the phone call sounded like this: "Hey, Jesse, I heard you sold your company. Congratulations." I'm like, "Thank you." "Hey, I've got this $500 million deal in my investment committee right now, and it's a great business. I really want to buy it." Well, we looked at their P&L, and item number 3 out of 100 items in terms of how big it was is digital marketing spend. So now these old guys are asking me a million questions about, goes Google, is the algorithm going to mess us up, and how much opportunity is there, is a risk? And I don't know how to answer them, Jesse. So I'm afraid I'm not going to get this deal done. I'm not going to, I really need help. What do I say to them? And the first few friends, I was like, yeah, just ask these 5 questions, say this. And, and I didn't want to spend time on it. My third friend of mine, Javier, old friend of mine from school, he was like, dude, can you just do this for me? I'll happily pay you a couple $100,000 to do this. It's a $500 million deal. I'll happily pay you, money to do this. So I was like, whoa, I called a few old Ampush people. I said, hey, guys, let's just look at this real quick.
Yep.
Let's go look at, and we came back with something. And this is where it got really interesting. He goes, dude, we're blown away by this, because the McKinsey, Bains, and BCGs of the world, they're really high level, they're expensive, but they're not practitioners. They don't actually run marketing. And then agencies, they just speak gobbledygook to us. So we don't know what they're saying. What you've done is you've taken the you've taken the Facebook and Google stuff and you've translated in our language, which is revenue and EBITDA. And so that business has, I think, probably got to 8 figures faster than GrowthAssistant did. I mean, it's grown super, super fast because there's tons of demand in private equity for that, and it's a new lever for them that they're not sure how to pull otherwise.
Amazing. I on a personal level, I think I've heard you speak about it on My First Million. And so it felt good to hear it again from you. Also on a professional level, we, as you know, we on the marketecture side. So obviously as the co-founder of Marketecture Media, but also as the founder of OhHello.ai. On the Marketecture Media side, we use Growth Assistant and have had fantastic success. So thank you.
Awesome.
What you, Adrian, and your team are doing. It's badass. So thank you,
man.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Let's pivot a little bit more. So from your entrepreneurial journey, just let's talk a little bit about mentorship and the mentors, the people that have helped you get to where you are today, where you've learned from them, how you've learned from them, whether it's a mentor, a friend-tor, people that have made that kind of impact.
Yeah. I think there's a saying out there, which is like, if you want to get a mentor, be someone who can be mentored or something, or be, and what does that mean? I think that's sometimes I'm like, what the hell does that actually mean? To me, it means
Be a sponge.
Be a sponge, right? But I think it means a few things. It means put yourself out there. My first mentor when I was a sophomore in college, a guy from St. Louis, he was the head trader at the interest rate trading desk at Credit Suisse. And I met him at an info session at Penn. I was an eager beaver, 20-year-old, wanted to work on Wall Street. And he said, I'm from St. Louis. I, oh, me too. And he's like, stares at me. He's like, what's your SAT score? What's your GPA? Here's my card. Call me next Thursday at 10 a.m. And I kid you not, dude, the guy was like, oh, I'm busy right now. Call me next week. He did that to me for like 4 months. And at the time, I was like naive. I just thought he was busy and I just kept calling him.
Yeah.
And on the 10th phone call, he was like, all right, like I'm going to make you an internship. And so, I was willing to put myself, I think you got to put yourself out there. I think you got to be a sponge. You got perseverance. I think you got to be a sponge. You got to be really open to taking feedback and coaching from people. And I am a lot of that's true for me in a lot of different ways. And so I think, I had him, he was a great one. I think I started my career at McKinsey and Company. I was literally just talking to my first engagement manager, who's now the CEO of like a multi-billion-dollar business, on Tuesday, and catching up with him. And it was, I thanked him. I said, I think about you all the time. We used to work on crazy projects until 1 a.m. every night and in consulting. And the guy always was cracking jokes and having fun despite how much we were working. I was like, it's a real gift I got from you for that. So I'd say there was that. I talk a lot publicly about Rick, and I think he's always, I tell people, the first person I ever worked with who I wanted to be like. I'd worked in consulting, I'd worked on Wall Street, and I looked at the senior people, and they were wonderful, by the way. I always worked with really wonderful people for the most part. But I didn't want to be them. I didn't want to be a partner at a consulting firm. Then I met Rick and I go, oh, wow, this guy is entrepreneur, businessman, great father. And his example has been powerful for me, but even as a mentor and someone giving me advice, he's been fantastic. So I mean, I have a longer list of that. There's, another
Keep
funny
on going.
story. Yeah. I mean, I could go on forever, dude. There's a guy named Ajay Bunga, who's the CEO of MasterCard for 10 years. And when I was at Goldman, I was working on Wall Street. I emailed him and I said, hey, I'm a young, sick boy. You're the CEO of MasterCard, but you wear a turban. I wear a turban. Like, will you meet me? And the guy met me. He went and he took a meeting with me, and he was like, I was like, what should I do with my career? What should I do with my life? He's like, man, you're 25, 26. You want to be an entrepreneur, go be an entrepreneur. And that, it's people like that pushing you and giving you the freedom to go do the things you want to do is just so powerful. So I mean, again, I have a huge list. I have my co-founders at Ampush. I'd call them friend tours. I mean, these guys, I was a young, very ambitious, aggressive guy. They're my same age, but both much more mature than me. And they would channel me and shape me in different ways. And I was telling my wife the other day, we were watching something where some good entrepreneur got like put in jail for something because he just overplayed his hand. And I was like, man, I'm so glad I had Chris and Nick. Who knows? I might have done something stupid like that. Like unchecked, I might have not had the the universe gives you all these gifts in terms of people to help you get you shaped, and you have to be willing to be shaped by them also.
Well, it's a good pivot. So, a couple things before we even pivot. So, one of the things that I heard was just you reaching out to the former CEO of, I believe you said MasterCard.
When he was CEO, by the way, not.
Yeah. So when he was CEO, but also being sick. So having that cultural and religious background and just putting yourself out there, just going for it, just doing it. A lot of people are afraid, or it's that fear of, ooh, what if I do something wrong? So it's totally that
when I was 20-year-old intern at Credit Suisse, I reached out to the president of the firm, Brian Halligan is his name, not a Sikh, just a normal dude, white guy, and he took 15 minutes with me and he got coffee. And
dude,
the thing you got to realize if you're a young person listening to this is the people who have made it in this world, they were aggressive and ambitious at some point. And so people in those positions love it. I mean, in fact, they actually look at it as a way to know that a person is likely to be on that path.
It's a mutual rubber band effect where there's a dopamine effect that comes from it, where it's a push and a pull. At what point did you decide, when you've been building these companies, that, you know what, I don't want to be CEO of them. I want to take a step back. I want to be able to pivot and be fractional across a bunch of different entrepreneurial ventures and run a venture studio and make an impact in
I mean, I would say I had a sense for it coming into starting the studio, and then the Kahani experience really reinforced it to me, because I raised money easily. I had a best team I'd ever worked with, pound for pound, in terms of reporting to me, because I knew how to hire. I mean, I knew how to be a CEO.
Yep.
And I wasn't enjoying it, and that was a real and so it was almost like and even like my CEO and CTO at GatewayX. They were the CEO and CTO of Kahani, because we were all kind of like, let's get one successful venture funded company off the ground, and then we can do more and more. And they were like, you're just not having fun, man. You're not enjoying this. And so, I think there's a lot of things that when you grow, as you get older and more mature, I think for me at least, one was to first know my energy, which I didn't even know what my energy was telling me. Then it's actually to like notice your energy. It's like awareness, then noticing, and then actually to trust your energy. And that's been the hardest part of the journey. It's like, okay, I'm not energized by this, so let me actually do something about it. So I'd say that was probably the moment for me where I said, no, this isn't the right thing for me. I think I had a sense much earlier than that, honestly, that I wanted to be more of a coach and a servant even, and help other people along this journey. And, I did it for over 10 years.
Right.
And I loved, I enjoyed it, and I learned a ton. And by the way, I always tell people, like, I might do it again. Like when my kids grow to college, I don't know, I could see myself being the CEO of a private equity or something like that. But
how
right
old are
now
your kids right now?
10, 8, and 1.
Okay. Yeah.
So you've got you give it 10-ish years, let's call it. Yeah. I mean, our daughter, but I could see, so, hey, you know what? You're a little older, you're 50. And my point is, I think we oftentimes make career moves and things like we extrapolate them for forever into the future. And I think that does us a disservice by just going, you know what, right now I want to do this.
Sure.
I don't want to be a CEO right now. And you know what, in a year or two, I might change my mind.
because that's how humans work.
That's how humans are.
Yeah.
And so I actually find it to be more powerful to say, I don't want to do this for now, and then I can change my mind, versus some people kind of like constantly have one foot in each, in each lane. I'm a little bit of a CEO, I'm a little bit not a CEO. And that to me is a recipe for suffering.
So it sounds like self-awareness is something that's been very important as you've developed and ascended within your career. As you've built teams, what have been the elements of what have been some of the more challenging components of building teams as an executive, as a CEO, as a founder?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a whole podcast. I'll answer it like this.
What do you look for
I
then?
think
That's easier.
this is just in vogue for me, so I'll say it is self-forgiveness and self-compassion. You make a lot of mistakes as a CEO growing a business and hiring executives, especially in leaders. Most of them can smell your bullshit, at least for me. And I had people around me who are going, dude, what are you doing? The way you're showing up in that meeting is not appropriate. And it could be you're on your phone too much, or you're late, or the way you treated that person wasn't right.
Right.
And I've been decent my whole life about taking feedback and listening to it, but then beating myself up about it. And I think finding the thing of like taking the feedback, making the adjustments, and then also letting it go and going, it's okay. Like, I'm allowed to make mistakes, and I'm a human being, and that's okay for me to make mistakes. So that's been, I think, learning the self-forgiveness, self-compassion component of it is probably one of the harder things to do.
I think that's a good way to wrap this up, Jesse. So one of the biggest takeaways that I got from this, and I hope our audience did too, is just the humility and the self-compassion of just saying, hey, it's okay. We're all in this together. You're not going to be perfect. You're going to, as you grow your career, you're going to make a lot of different pivots and changes. Nothing is forever. And ultimately, knowing that you intrinsically are going to evolve depending on who you're working with, it just changes the philosophy on how you approach things.
Yeah. And I think depending on, how spiritual you are, religious or whatever, like
Yeah.
the universe is driving a lot of this. And that's something I've learned and seen in a lot of different ways in my life, which is like, this, by the way, this is not a license to go be an asshole or like make dumb choices and mistakes. I think once you've done something though, say you blew up at someone, or say you made a bad strategy choice that led the company down the wrong path, you gotta let it go, forgive yourself and learn from it for sure. But like let go of the feeling and the sort of and that part of it is to realize that the universe brought it into your life for a reason, for the learning, right? There's something I saw on TikTok the other day. It was just like, if God wanted you, if you told God before you were born you wanted to be courageous, he's gonna give you a lot of scary stuff to face so you can become courageous. Like, oh shit, okay, well, and then I think there's a lot to be said about that. Like, again, whether you believe in that stuff or not, the mindset is really powerful to hold.
How religious are you in that sense? Do you follow?
I'm pretty spiritual, increasingly more and more spiritual.
Do you think so? We're about the same age. We talked about this before we started recording. And do you think it's also because as a father, as a business leader, the spirituality, the traditions, the culture, like what do you think for you? What drives the component of religion?
Think it's interesting, right? I think I've always worn my turban and been sort of culturally religious, and people say like, oh, I'm a cultural Jewish person. Like, I would have described myself up until a few years ago as a cultural Sikh.
Yeah,
I looked the part. I knew some of the stuff. I'd gone to the
you wouldn't be both.
Yeah, exactly, right. And how do I describe this? I think the personal growth journey for me at some point flipped into a spiritual journey. Because as I was working on myself and getting better and trying to sort of make sense of all these things, it became more and more clear to me that things are going to happen in the world that you don't control anything.
You don't control anything.
And then it became clear that whatever you want to call it, you can call it God, you can call it the universe, you can call it something else is controlling things, and it's not you. And you could even just call it science if you want. And in that there's some plan that you are not privy to, that's if that plan wants you dead tomorrow, you'll be dead, and if the science wants you dead, whatever it is. And You can call it random chance if you want, but there's something else at work, and that sort of just became more and more apparent to me. And then when I looked at the world that way and I approached it that way, it actually in some ways was liberating for me, because I was like, oh, I'm not in control. So now I can kind of, there's no obligation on top of me. Like something else is at work here, and my job is to kind of play my part in that and be of service inside that. So
I respect that. I look at it in a way of there's only one thing in the world that I can control, and that's just how
That's right.
I'm thinking. I
Yep.
can never control how other people think, but I can, the way that I treat others is going to make them feel better. The more that I engage with people, the more I smile, make them laugh, make them feel comfortable. It makes them feel better throughout their day. And if it gives them a sense of just being compassionate, just helps.
Totally.
So, Jesse, this has been awesome. Really appreciate
Yeah,
it.
man. Thanks for having me on,
joining us on
Jeremy.
OhHello.
All right.
Cool. Thanks,
Bye.
Jesse. Thanks, everybody.